Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is the Vermont House Committee on Commerce and Economic Development. It is Tuesday, February 28th, 2023 at 1:02 in the afternoon. So we're back here to continue our discussions on FY 2024 budget. So we're looking first at Vermont State Colleges. Joyce, welcome. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see you again.
Nice to see you. And Ryan's going to join me. Can he sit?
Yes.
This is perfect. Thank you.
There's a chair right up
Oh,
here.
yeah, Ryan, because that'll be a committee. Yeah.
All right. He is
Yep.
here.
Here. Can you scoot by?
He's here. We saw him.
Great.
Okay.
Great. I do. I get the comfy chair age before youth, right? Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. So we're looking at the one-time dollars that are in the budget request. B 1100 A3 and I think the language is E602 and E605D. So thank you for joining us and want to hear more about what your thoughts are.
Yes, thank you. And I'm Joyce Judy. I'm president of the Community College of Vermont. And Ryan DeLude is
Director of Financial Aid at CCV.
And so what I thought, I would just take 2 minutes and give a quick overview of CCV and then talk about very specifically the governor's proposal. So just for, I think most of you know this, and I'll try to make it brief, but in case you don't know, the Community College of Vermont is part of the Vermont State College system, but we in the system, there will be two colleges starting July 1. I would say that CCV is the access institution in the state of Vermont. We provide access. This was part of our mission in 1970 when Governor Dean Davis created the college. How do you take education to Vermonters locally? And we have 12 locations scattered throughout the state of Vermont, and we serve about 10,000 Vermonters every year. So we are the second largest college in the state next to the University of Vermont, but we serve a tremendous number of Vermonters. 94 to 96% of our students every semester are Vermonters. So they're people that they're getting their education and they're going to stay here. The other thing I would just mention is that CCV serves a huge diversity of students. So our average age is 26, but 50% of our students now are traditional age students. And they come to us, a lot of those younger students, because of cost they can put together, they can come to us, save a lot of money on the front end of their education, and then continue their education. We currently have 2,000 high school students enrolled at CCV doing dual enrollment, early college, or some combination of that. This semester, we have almost 200 veterans and military connected students. We serve a lot of students with disabilities. We serve a lot of adults who have been hurt in the workforce and now are coming back for a new career, people who have been passed over for promotion, people who are looking to enter. So what's nice is they all come together and enter the classroom because they really want to learn. And that is the beauty of CCV. And our role is to really prepare them for their next step, whether it's for that job or whether they are going to transfer. We have transfer pathways with every college in Vermont and many, many colleges outside of Vermont. So a lot of people start with us. They can transfer to the University of Vermont. We have multiple pathways, and they can enter through guaranteed admissions programs, and they can start as juniors and they save a chunk of money on the front end. Yep.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Are you seeing an increase in Vermont National Guard personnel coming, using the new benefits?
You know, I wouldn't say we've seen a spike in that, but I think we do a lot of work with the Guard. And so I would say it's a pretty significant presence, but I'm not sure that I would say that we'd seen a spike in that. But I think that, like I'm spending some time at the Air Guard next Friday because we try to do a lot of work with them. I think one of the things, and you probably have many of you have heard these two statistics, Vermont enjoys a really high graduation rate, one of the highest in the country from high school. But the downside is we have one of the lowest college going rates in the country, or continuing their education beyond high school. So that's military, that's apprenticeships, that's going on to college. And I'm not someone that believes everyone needs to go to college, but I do believe that everyone needs to continue their education beyond high school. And so, as we look at those two statistics, I've talked to many people in this room, and, Vermont has really struggled and tried really hard to crack that nut, and it's been really difficult. But I can say, due to the hard work of the legislature and the governor's office, that we have started to crack that nut. And because Vermont really has an affordability problem. We have one, as a community college and the most accessible institution, CCV has the highest, or one of the highest, tuition rates in the country. But what happened, and this is one of the silver linings of COVID, is Vermont dealt with affordability in ways that they've never done before. And so a lot of the federal money that came in, you all provided Vermonters who were impacted by COVID the opportunity to continue their education. And CCV was one of the few community colleges in the country that saw an uptick in enrollment during COVID. So while most community colleges were dropping 10 to 20%, CCV's enrollment went up 10%. And I have to attribute it to the fact that we dealt with affordability like we've never done before. Because we surveyed all those students, particularly the students through the Workforce 2.0, the Workforce 3.0, of why they chose to continue their education when they did. And not more than 90% of them said it was about money. They didn't have the resources to invest previous that. That's a pretty strong statement. And so that leads me to the proposal that the Vermont State Colleges had put forward a proposal for $6 million to add to our base to cut our tuition by 25%. And the reason that we put forward that is because wouldn't it be nice if Vermont didn't have the most expensive fees in the country? And so we had proposed by dropping it 25%, we still wouldn't be on the average, but we wouldn't be at the top end. And so that was our ask. And then to the governor, and then the governor took a different approach, which I am grateful for, and I think we can make whatever work. And so the governor's proposal is not to reduce tuition by 25%, but to reduce tuition by 50% in targeted areas. And Ryan's going to share the numbers because it does impact the vast majority of our students. But his goal was, and I think a laudable goal, was to try and help direct people into the careers and to the certificate programs that are most needed in Vermont. So really from an economic development standpoint, how do we help really encourage people with money to enter those fields? And so I think that this is, it is a huge opportunity for Vermont to finally really continue with the affordability issue. Before I turn it to Ryan, I just want to say that thank you for the work that you've done to fund the 802 Opportunity Grant as well, because that is a life changer for half of the families in the state of Vermont, because it does allow them to go to college at CCV and finish their first 2 years at no cost to them. That is huge. And so what we're hoping is to build on that through these programs. And so I will stop there and I will turn it over to Ryan just to share a few statistics about how many people the proposal from the governor's office would impact. And really the difference between the VSC, the original ask, and the governor's proposal is really about one-time money in essence. We had asked for a 25% we asked for $6 million to reduce our tuition by 25% and add that to our base, so it would be ongoing. And The governor's proposal is for 10 million over 2 years, but reducing it by 50%. And the significance of either of those proposals is that they add to the 802 Opportunity Program, because particularly for the middle class, people who are earning more than 75,000, they oftentimes do not have the discretionary money to spend. And this makes, by extending and cutting tuition much further, it allows that group of individuals the opportunity to invest in themselves. So I'll turn it over to Ryan and he can share a few statistics.
Great. Thank you, Joyce. And hi, everyone. So in terms of the academic programs we're talking here, again, we're really talking about programs that are focused on getting students into the workforce and getting them in quickly. So we're talking the majority of our associate degree programs and then nearly all of our certificate programs, which are certificate programs are really those sort of short-term 1-year programs that we have for students that are very focused on exactly what they need to get the job that they want. And so nearly all of those students are looking at that. So altogether, CCV has about 10,000 unique students a year that we enroll. And so the combined impact of these programs would comprise about 70% of our students in our programs college-wide. Now, that's based upon our current numbers right now. I think if this program were to come to fruition and we have sort of two different rates, I would expect students would have pretty significant interest in moving towards some of those programs that have a reduced cost for them. I think too, in terms of, so there's an additional piece to this with the governor's proposal that's really focused on continuing education students too. So not just those students that are in an associate's degree or certificate program, but also those students that are here at CCV to take one class or two classes that they're looking to upskill or reskill in the job that they're currently doing right now, to get a promotion at work, to move laterally within the organization. And so there are courses that are really focused on that effort as well to get students moving. And I just want to give some sort of basic pieces on 802 Opportunity as well, is that so this past fall, we had more than 50% of our degree seeking students received an 802 Opportunity grant. So more than half of our students got an 802 Opportunity grant, which is fantastic. Last year, the entire year, we had more than 2,100 students, more than 2,000 students receive that, which is fantastic. And I think when we're looking at the number of 802 Opportunity students, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. So, okay, so you said that you had 10,000 students, but 50% of the students use these 802 Opportunity?
We had 10,000 unique students a year and
Yeah.
2,000 of them last year used.
That was last year when we were just ramping up the program.
Okay.
So we
Right.
are seeing now 50% of our students starting this fall
Oh,
accessing it.
Okay.
So we had, because it was the ramp up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
thanks.
And then just in terms of 802 Opportunity, I think one of the pieces was in terms of the programs that are under the governor's proposal for students that received 802 were eligible for 802 Opportunity last year. It's about 80% of our 802 Opportunity students fall into these academic programs. So, and I think just in closing, before I turn it back over to Joyce, I think to Joyce's point, we have 75,000, the 802 Opportunity Grant was a wonderful vehicle for students, particularly for those adult students that when they're applying for financial aid, they don't get any grant money and they have to really rely upon loan debt to finance their education. 802 Opportunity was a really great answer for them to be able to further their career. We do have students as well that are a family of four that earn $80,000 to $85,000 that aren't able to access 802 Opportunity, but still have needs as a Vermonter. And this is a program that can really speak to that group that may be still looking to advance their career or move into a new career, or a young individual that is trying to just embark on a career at the end. So.
Good, and we're happy to answer questions. And we just are really grateful to the fact that you're entertaining this. And I think is being able to, anytime we can adjust tuition for Vermonters, particularly on the front end of their education, is just so important. So anything we can do, I'm grateful to for.
Thank you both so much. So first, what is the current CCV tuition?
The current CCV tuition is $280 a credit. And so, and I actually looked this up this morning because I wanted to check it out. So the average community college tuition in the country is $141. So we are twice as much as, and there are many schools that are significant, in the few dollars.
Right.
But yeah, so for a person to take a course and to, afford the fee, but we only have one fee for all courses, but for books, for all the supplies and things, you have to figure about $1,000. And that's a lot of money for families that are working and, just are trying to figure out how to meet all their needs. And so anytime we can adjust tuition for all Vermonters, it would be great.
And my other question was, so I understand that the governor's proposal is to do this as a 2-year program, limited funds and whatnot. I worry, I would prefer the first proposal you talked about, because for me, setting someone up for 2 years, if they start a year out from now, means that things go back up in terms of cost for tuition on year 3. And I just worry about kicking out a larger conversation that we really should be having around permanent reduction in tuition. So this becomes, if we really, as you were sort of framing in the first part of your comments and testimony, really making this a permanent change in what we're trying to do, because the workforce issues aren't going to go away in 2 years, last I checked. And,
Yep.
And certainly the student debt issue is not going to be solved in 2 years as well. So I guess that's turned into more of a comment, but I guess I worry about, there being we're setting people up 2 years out for going right back to where we are now.
Yep, and that is the difference between the two proposals, in terms of one is putting it into a base and having it permanent, and the other is using the funds to offset a bigger chunk of tuition, but on a shorter term basis. And, how do you reconcile those two?
Thank you.
Heather?
Most classes are 3 credits.
Yes.
And how many credits for a certificate in a year, let's say?
Most certificates are around 24 credits. But, the majority of our students don't go to school full-time. And so about 80% of our students go part-time, so they'll take a couple of courses. And so, oftentimes it will take them 2 or 3 years to even earn a certificate. Just to complement what Ryan was saying, one of the things we've done with the reason why we've really taken off and really gotten serious and developed a lot of certificates is really our work with businesses. Businesses are saying, okay, we want students with this cluster of courses. We'll support them to get their associate degree after they come to work for us. But this is the cluster of courses, the knowledge that we need for them to get started in our business. And so that's the result of the certificates.
Question, Judy. I am concerned about completion.
Yep.
So I just wanted to know, I don't know if you have these percentages, but I'm really worried about students taking on debt and then not graduating, or at least not getting a certificate, not getting associates, not, for whatever reason, have debt, but without the degree. Do you have statistics on that about how many is there I know it takes a long time sometimes for students to finish these degrees.
Well, I'll make a couple of comments. One is, 54% of our students who graduate with no debt. So that is, and we're really proud of that fact. And I think that all the affordability pieces we're trying to address so that students don't borrow. And, the hard part about the student loan program through the federal government is it's an entitlement program. So if you are registered for 6 credits and you're taking, you're enrolled and you're attending, we cannot stop you as an institution from borrowing that money. All we can do is advise and recommend. And Ryan works really closely with all the advisors at the college, because we try to ensure that students don't borrow more than they need. And the 802 Opportunity Program has made it so students don't have to borrow because it's not part of the financial package. So anytime we can reduce the cost, they in turn really do they can borrow a lot less. But the hard part around student loans for an institution is it's an entitlement. And so we can't stop them. But if we can make tuition as affordable and as low as possible, at least they don't have to borrow. And one of the things that's quite interesting in Vermont that's different than other states is because our tuition is high, if a student take away, any of the programs that we have in Vermont, but if a student is enrolled in 6 credits or full-time and they qualify for full financial aid, because our tuition is so high, the Pell Grant that comes to them barely covers tuition. And so if they need money to support themselves going to school, they have to borrow. That's a very different scenario than other states. In other states where tuition is much lower, the Pell Grant covers tuition and gives them money oftentimes for living expenses. So anytime we can reduce tuition costs, gives them more of an opportunity to use some of the federal grant money for living expenses. Does that make sense? It's just one of those things. And what's hard is CCV's model. It's not that we're an expensive model. Our model of delivery is below the national average. So it's not like we have an expensive model of delivery. It's just the way the state has supported higher education historically.
And if I can just add to that too, we saw with the 802 Opportunity Grant last year, year over year, we saw a 45% reduction in the amount of students that borrowed loans through CCV. And so when we're talking about affordability vehicles and having students be able to afford their education, the demonstration of what we got from the 802 Opportunity Grant with that drastic of a low amount of loan debt really adds to less students needing to borrow funds for those. And really, we're looking at students that are borrowing loans that are, as Joyce said, looking for funds above and beyond tuition, really looking for it to help with they're having to go from a full-time job to a part-time job to be able to fit in their education into their life.
But we are equally concerned about people starting and then leaving school and not having, and this is why we have, all of our credentials are nested in a degree. So anything we do is nested in a continuum so that if they leave and they come back 2 years later, they can pick up where they've left off. It was interesting. We have a new institutional research person and they are looking at patterns of enrollment to try and figure out, are there things that we can do to change behavior? And he was fascinated because he took a sample of 800 students and there were 400 distinct enrollment patterns. So he said, I'm trying to find the commonalities here, but I will tell you that because people come and go every year in a semester, about a third of our students are new to CCV, a third of our students were there the previous semester, and a third of our students were at CCV sometime in the past. It's been, so they come and go and people will come back 2 or 3 years later. It's, life gets in the way of so many of our students. But the more we can, we're trying, we want them to leave CCV with a credential, with something that is really important. Yeah.
Good question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me pull.
Hello, for the record, Catherine Lavasser, Director of External and Governmental Affairs for the Vermont State Colleges System, and I'm very proud to follow my esteemed colleagues at Community College of Vermont. So just a quick refresher, Vermont State Colleges System is Community College of Vermont, Castleton University, Northern Vermont University, and Vermont Technical College. And the three residential institutions will soon be unified in July to be Vermont State University. If I may, I did pull some of the National Guard statistics from the last 2 years, as well as some retention and completion data, just to bring those questions to President Judy and her team. We have seen an increase from the 2021 academic year to the 21-22 academic year in the number of students taking advantage of the National Guard scholarships. There were 21 students across the system, all four institutions in the 2021 academic year, and 26 this last year. In programs ranging from radiologic sciences, respiratory therapy, a lot of interest in the nursing programs, as well as some interest in the construction trades, education, and some of the other programs. That seems to be a heavy interest in allied health sciences. In addition, with retention and completion, with the transformation work that is ongoing, we are reinvesting in student success and some new and different ways of doing things. And so I just wanted to share that one of the goals that President Graywall has for Vermont State University is to embed micro-credentials in work. So it could be something as simple as taking a business class that has an embedded Excel credit. So that every student, no matter if they take one class with us or if they take a full course load with us, every student is leaving with something. So it's something building off of the success of CCV's model with the stackable credentials. We're also looking to do that at the sister institution at Vermont State University. Additionally, we are reinvesting in institutional research, as Joyce mentioned, across the system. So we recently received some external federal funding in the form of congressionally directed funding or an earmark to support enhanced institutional research that will help us better understand the different cohorts of people that we serve. Because currently what is most available, because it's federally required, is the first time full-time students. So that cohort of individuals is the one that's tracked both internally and federally. But that misses all of the transfer students. It misses the students that come to college with some existing credits. It misses students that move in and out of college, as so many of our students do. And so we're really interested to see what that data shows in the coming years. But what our current data does show is that in terms of retention and completion, we are doing better. And we've done marginally better, incrementally better every year the last couple of years, which has been a good success for us. So before I started, I just wanted to share that with you as well. So I am talking about the budget proposal today. And so I was going to start in B 1100, section 3. So there's a $19 million appropriation to the Vermont State Colleges. And there's two sections of that. Section A is $9 million in bridge funding to support the ongoing system transformation. So as you heard from us earlier this year, and a short refresher from me now, we have ongoing transformation work. We're doing this in partnership with the legislature, in partnership with the state, to ensure that the Vermont State Colleges are thriving, are healthy, and are sustainable long-term. And we're on a 5-year plan as established by the Select Committee on the Future of Public Higher Education in Vermont, endorsed in the budget in FY22 and adopted by our Board of Trustees. We're on this 5-year sustainability plan. And so it's a plan to pull down our structural deficit while simultaneously increasing our base appropriation from the state and allowing us the opportunity to transform the institutions all up and down meaningfully. The $9 million reflected here is the one-time support. So the state has provided one-time support bridge funding to assist us with our structural deficit while we engage in this transformation work. And this is the funding that is set aside for that this year. So we are in full support of that request and respectfully ask that it is recommended for us as well. And section B is the funding for the one-time pilot at Community College of Vermont, which you just heard President Judy and Ryan speak about. I'm happy to take a pause, or if you want me to keep going.
Any questions on what Catherine's? Heather, could you put the capacity on the outside? Thank you. I think we're at 18 now.
Just a quick, sorry. Just a quick, so Catherine, you just said section A is the 19,000. I'm trying to, we're popping around our spreadsheets, I just want to drop
Yes.
to zero, but.
Section 3 is the 19,000, A is the 9,000 in bridge funding, and B is the 10,000 for Community College of Vermont.
Oh, I see.
So that comes, that's the 19,000.
19 million,
That's-
dropped a couple zeros.
Sorry, say it again. So
9
nine,
million.
so 9 million is the one-time
Transformation.
bridge funding, and the 10 million is the
CCD,
CCB.
tuition reduction.
Okay.
Which is the governor's proposal. So is that 602, E 602 point, sorry, I'll ask this question later, I just.
Section B 1,100.
Right, so do we
But
know,
the language is in E 602.1.
okay,
We have a document on the website that has.
Yeah. I'm gonna try to have Andrew touch base with appropriation, see if we can get those, just those exact language details so that we can, usually they send all that up to us, but
It's on,
it's there, but it's in the whole document. We're just trying to, I think we can just get the documents that we need to look at. We'll get that done.
And I am going off the language, if that's helpful, not the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
The second section is, section E 605, small d. And that is the 1 million in general fund appropriation, to continue the Vermont Trade Scholarship Program. And so I know that you'll be hearing, more from VSEC about this a little bit later today, but on behalf of the Vermont State Colleges System, I wanted to express our support for this appropriation. We have a number of students at both CCV and Vermont Technical College that have benefited from this in programs ranging from automotive technology, civil engineering, radiography, construction practice management, architectural and building, entrepreneurial skills. And it's a niche that's not a lot of additional funding for students that fit the needs of the Vermont Trade Program. And so we were very excited to see it in the budget last year and would be very excited to see the funds available moving forward. And then I believe that is it, unless the chair.
Is there anything you can talk about the 3D printing?
I can. Oh,
I think we're gonna get into that more when we come back from break, but be part of our workforce. Maybe if you're able to talk about that, just to give the committee a preview of what we're looking at.
yes. And actually, just one note, I did email to your committee assistant a sheet that kind of shows you the breakdown of CCV tuition compared to our fellow states. You will see Vermont as an outlier with our friend New Hampshire at the bottom there. And so the certificate in 3D technology is a proposal that President Graywall has for Vermont State University. I believe you might remember when Jay Shree Bhatt, our Associate Vice President of Workforce Development, I always get the titles a little wrong, and Pat Moulton, the Vermont State College's Executive Director of Workforce Development, spoke about the Advanced Manufacturing Center and what a gem we have in the advanced manufacturing world right here in Randolph. So we were able to build that center with I believe it was about $10 million federal grant through the Department of Defense. And we are becoming a hub in the Northeast for that significant technology and for the advanced manufacturing work. And so this is beyond like the 3D printer that you might buy at Amazon. This is additive and subtractive manufacturing. It is, you can put an airplane propeller part in there and understand the structural deficiencies inside that you would never see with the naked eye and get a readout of that. So you can take it home to, where you are manufacturing that airplane part, plug it into your own system and analyze the deficiencies there. It is truly remarkable equipment. And so we have been thinking thoughtfully. We have excellent manufacturing programs at both CCV and Vermont Tech. And we've been thinking thoughtfully about how to bridge with K through 12 into the advanced manufacturing program. Currently, a lot of the interest, because we just did the ribbon cutting this summer, a lot of the interest has been businesses bringing their employees in for upskilling and enhanced training in the new technologies. We are interested in bringing more students through and creating more bridges so that we're able to fill a lot of the workforce needs in Vermont and beyond, but also so that there is that interest peaked in manufacturing and in these advanced technologies early on. And so we've put together a proposal to deliver a certificate in 3D technology. And what it would be is a total of 9 credits. So three courses in a short 6-week intensive, a total of 9 credits and a residential summer program housed in Randolph and in Castleton for students to get both college credit, but also workforce ready skills and exposure to these advanced technologies at a young age. And so it's a combination of hands-on experiences, skills and certificates that students can take with them as they leave the program and as they leave high school. And it feeds directly into our current manufacturing programs if they wanted to take that to a full associate or bachelor's level. Would you like me to continue or pause there?
I just have a question about that. Something that I'm struggling with is I've been seeing over and over folks who have expertise wanting to share that out and creating certificate programs or other kinds of programs for that. But I'm curious if there's a request from the businesses for this certificate, right, or for this specific training? Because I know you said people are coming in for upskilling, but just want to make sure that there's a need and we're not creating a certificate that there isn't a need for.
Yes, it does. And that is a really great point. I think what we are hearing from the businesses is that there's nowhere else to get these skills. And what we hear from our students is that the credentials give you something marketable and they give you the proof in the pudding for when you put it on your resume, you go to the business, you say, I can do this, I want this job. And so I think we have an incredible amount of demand from the businesses, and our students in the manufacturing and in the trade courses can't be high, like we have businesses clamoring for them and we don't have enough students to give them. And so we're constantly looking for new ways to pull people in and to help bridge some of those gaps in workforce development in the state.
Great, thank you, that's really helpful.
Additionally, it dovetails with the stacking credentials and with the desire to pull in more K through 12 students.
Catherine, do you want to talk about the restorative justice BA a bit?
Yes.
Mike and I had an earlier conversation.
Yes. So an additional proposal that we've been discussing, we have a restorative justice minor at Northern Vermont at Linden, and this is being integrated. So with the unification, we are pulling together the program array for all of the institutions. And so we've unified the criminal justice program between Northern Vermont University and Castleton University, and we're retaining the minor program. We have a desire and demand to pull that up to a full bachelor's degree, and I believe it would be the first bachelor's degree in restorative justice in the country. And so what this does is it both complements our criminal justice program, but also fills a different market need. It dovetails with the state's goals around restorative justice and recidivism, and helps fill some of the workforce needs there. In order to pull the program up to a full bachelor's degree, because we are In order to do that concept, we would be developing something completely new that no one else is doing currently. We do have a request for some one-time funding to help us do the faculty and program development, bring on the faculty and program development needed to pull that from a minor to a full bachelor's degree. Additionally, we have a board member on our board of trustees who's a vice president at Vermont Law School. And she's been incredibly helpful in helping us bridge because they have a master's program. And so to create a continuum of stackable credentials within the state, we're looking at ways to bridge that from the bachelor's to the master's degree. And our current program, we have a really strong relationship with the Caledonia District Attorney and with the St. Johnsbury Work Camp and the program in Caledonia County. And so we'd be building on that model in the Northeast Kingdom to pull this up to a fully fleshed out program.
And so where are those one-time funds being considered?
That is a great question. The one-time funds are not reflected in any budget proposal in front of the committee. It's a concept that we are offering as a workforce development proposal, but they aren't found in a recommendation they weren't able to be recommended by the governor's office.
Will you provide that information to us?
Yes.
Okay. I have a follow-up question. Okay.
Madam Vice Chair.
Well, actually, my
It's all
topic,
restorative.
but on this,
Yes.
go ahead, you first, I have a second.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Just on restorative practice, because one piece I've been starting to help the committee think ahead about is around educator workforce issues. And it's a little bit of what I do in my other day job that I hold, because it's a fun job to hold two at the same time. But the piece around restorative practices is a real need in our schools as they think about the climate, not only for students, but for educators in those spaces, and thinking around what does it take to not only recruit but retain educators who especially hold a minoritized identity, and really thinking about how that kind of interplays with recruitment in general for the state of Vermont and retaining folks in the state of Vermont. So I think this is really, not only is it exciting to be a nationwide leader potentially, but I think there is such a deep need, at least at minimum in our school districts, where people are really trying to think through how do we move away from sort of limitations of certain current discipline programs, but thinking more innovatively around how that has a rippling out effect in students' well-being and students who want to be maybe teachers in the future, and really thinking about the climate that they're experiencing now as we think about other ways we can resolve conflict and address harm, discrimination, et cetera. So.
Well, that's so important because we do educate an enormous chunk of the state's educator workforce. And it's one thing, I'll just share briefly that when we did the program array unification, we unified special education and K through 6 education. So our elementary education program is a single curriculum moving forward starting this summer. So individuals, previously we had a special education track and an educator track. And moving forward, individuals in the K through 6 track will have one unified curriculum. They will be trained in both the special education and early childhood education, because educators and individuals who want to be special educators need both sets of skills. And so there was broad recognition. We consider it a huge win of the program unification to have that being offered statewide. And then for 6 through 8 and for high school teachers, the curriculum is a little bit different just by nature of the underlying education curriculum. But I can see tremendous need for that in many areas.
Any other questions on restorative justice? Okay, I have a question on criminal justice.
Yes.
So we have heard that psychologist officer criminal justice major.
Yes.
And many of those students, or some of those students, go on to this police academy.
Yes.
Our understanding is there's duplication with the coursework offered at the state police academy, and that coursework that's offered to college folks who have a degree in criminal justice. And our concern is duplication. We know it takes a long time for police to get trained at the academy. If they already have this coursework, is there an opportunity for them, for the police academy, to waive courses that have already been taken by those students? So they can be a quicker process perhaps at the police academy, or they can concentrate on other things, not have to take the same coursework twice.
Yes, so we have an MOU and an articulation agreement with the police academy, so that their credits are transferred into our programs. And there's a number of 2 and 3 credit courses from the police academy that we offer, we offer the credit for, as they come into our criminal justice programs. What we likely need is the other way.
Yes, exactly.
So for our courses to count when they go in. And so when you had asked this question, it sparked a conversation that has started to that regard. So we have a one-way MOU from us to them. What we need is the MOU from them to us.
Right, and I would suspect it'd be great for Vermont State College, I mean, CCV and Vermont State Colleges, but also UVM and other
Champlain.
private institutions that are, yeah, because, yeah, Champlain has a program too, right, so, right. Need to figure that out now.
Yes. I absolutely appreciate the question, and it sparked a good conversation
So you're working on that,
that we will have. Yeah.
you're working on that, okay, great, okay.
It looks like, I believe, the MOU is fairly new. The MOU is fairly new, and so we need to establish the other direction as well.
I think what we need probably not from, what's the name of the council that,
Criminal Justice Training Council?
Yeah. So I think what we need from them is to bring them and have that discussion with them as well, so that they're not just reaching out with you, but they're reaching out with all the state colleges and these MOUs, so that we're aligning curriculum, so that it takes that piece out and makes it easier for someone to go through the academy, whether state police or, municipal police. I think it's an opportunity to maybe get more people through the academy that have already taken the training, but at the same time, it'd be cheaper for municipalities and for the state to put somebody through training, and maybe the savings could be used to help offset some of the costs that they incurred while they were going to college. So another incentive for them to join a police department somewhere in the state. Good. Else, Jared?
So in terms of the budget that's being put out here, and you mentioned the transformation system that's currently going to be affecting all of the campuses across the state. In terms of a budgetary number, what would need to be adjusted in order to actually keep the library systems open for the colleges?
That is a great question. And let me take you back a little bit, if you don't mind, as I answer. So there's been a lot of conversation about the Vermont State Colleges lately and what is or is not happening with athletics and libraries. And so I'm happy to set the record straight for this committee. We're not closing any library on the campuses, and we are not removing access to materials that students need to complete their coursework. What we are doing is transferring to digital library services, and so enhancing what we are currently offering in terms of online periodicals, resources, books, et cetera, across all of the campuses and online. It creates equity between the campuses. It creates equity for our students that don't have access to a physical campus. We're also not, the reduction in staff that is currently ongoing. It is not our credentialed librarian staff, so we are retaining credentialed librarians on all of the campuses. The staff reduction was circulation individuals, for the most part, associated with the physical books. What we've seen over the last number of years is a significant decrease, even when you control for the pandemic, in the use of our print materials. There's, I believe, less than 5,000 books across all of the campuses that are taken out on a regular basis. And so maintaining those collections, updating those collections to the most recent versions, and maintaining the staff necessary to care for those collections, it hasn't become sustainable, especially as we are on this 5-year plan to ensure that the campuses and the colleges are sustainable moving forward. And so we are investing in the digital resources. We are keeping the library spaces available for students, for individual work, group work, all of the ways that students currently use the libraries. And we will be keeping credentialed librarians on campus, as well as in a virtual format for students to access for help with their research needs.
That still doesn't answer the question of what would it take in terms of a monetary adjustment in order to actually have those people not lose their jobs. Because to my understanding, it's 7 full-time people and 3 part-time people that as a result of this merger are, and for commerce and economic development, of course, so anything that causes people to lose their jobs, that's one thing I'm trying to figure out here is that per the president and his multiple speeches given on it, he estimated that it would save with his originally projected plan to save him $500,000 a year. And I'm not sure if you were here last week for the multiple students from across campuses that actually came to the State House.
I was here, we spoke that day.
Yeah.
So it is a savings of $500,000 to $600,000 a year that the Vermont State Colleges will see with these 2 changes. And that is estimated to be an ongoing savings. We have provided opportunity, and we do anticipate that there are opportunities within the system for the individuals that did receive a RIF to have another employment opportunity. And our Human Resources Department is working with those individuals on a one-on-one basis. I think the challenge is change is very uncomfortable, and we've been given a charge by the state to save $5 million a year for 5 years. And to fully transform and unify our institutions while being affordable and accessible and providing equitable access. And there are some difficult decisions that the institution leaders and the chancellor have had to make. There will be more difficult decisions. And at the end of the day, we all share the goal of doing the very best for our students and for Vermonters. And that's what we are all seeking to achieve.
So at this point in time, has the board even considered a possible number in terms of a monetary adjustment in order to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so this was a decision made at the institutional level by the president and his leadership team. It was not a decision made by the Board of Trustees.
Okay, so has the president spoken with the governor about it? Has the president spoken with anybody about it? My initial concern right now, and there's no issue with trying to save money. The issue is simultaneously lowering tuition while also substantially cutting back programs. You have institutions that have been around for a very long time, and one thing I know is particular, especially with the numerous emails, phone calls, interactions I've had with people from all across different campuses, students are perceiving the institution as not being stable right now as a result of these changes, especially the changes happening at the library level. And many students have considered transferring, which means that we're losing money to go to those systems. So I would highly encourage the president to consider a possible number in terms of what it would take in order to keep that library system afloat, because it is a central part of the academic institution. Speaking particularly from Castleton, I mean, they've had a lot of programs they've had to cut back over the years. So that one in particular, it's people losing their jobs, it's students losing access to the traditional method of having books. Nothing against a online system, and having a hybrid system would be absolutely wonderful, because then you have the best of both worlds at that point. But there's a lot of uncertainty regarding the future of that system, and that uncertainty is starting to translate to not just the student bodies, but also to local communities who rely on the health of these institutions to feed their families, keep their businesses going. And in addition to that, it's a advertising tool for Vermont. I myself am a Castleton graduate, and I'm here today, and I attribute quite a bit of that me being here as a result of me going to Castleton and experiencing Vermont the way I have. And it's something that we need in order to diversify the future of our economy and our state. And the problem is right now, until this situation gets addressed directly and until we can make an appropriation to help save that system, it's going to be a public relations nightmare.
We'll say the best work that the legislature has done is to provide the shore up and the reassurances to our communities, to our students, our faculty and staff, and our rural host communities in support of the system transformation. And all of our communities, all of our students, all of our employees have been incredibly grateful for both the increased base appropriation as well as the bridge funding and the workforce development and scholarships that the state has provided to our students. That has done incredible work to shore up the communities and our internal communities during what's been a challenging couple of years. And we recognize that communication around this particular issue could have gone significantly better, and we're using it as a lesson learned for next time. But the change and the moment of change that we are in is ongoing, and we just really appreciate the support that we've seen from this committee, from the House, from the Senate, and from the governor's office.
I think we're done with this. If it's another subject, that's fine, but we've got to move on. We're going to be here till 5 or 5:30, and if we continue, it'll be 6 or 7. So this is more of I think, a discussion with appropriations than it is with our committee. And so I would just recommend maybe having a conversation with our appropriations. Anything else, Catherine?
I am all set, and I welcome, folks know how to reach me if you have additional questions. I appreciate the support.
Thank you.
Is it okay if Jay just comes
Yep.
up with me?
Yep, there's a
Just take turns.
chair there. It's fine.
All right, one chair here, and we have I'll slide this one chair.
I like to sit next to Roxanne when I testify.
Oh, hi.
Like last time.
How are you?
Good.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Catherine.
You want me to change the sound?
Yeah.
What do we got?
Catherine left.
50, yeah. Take the sign off.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. For the record, I'm Carol Smith from Governor Scott's office. I believe I was invited in this afternoon to speak a little bit more about the proposal for the $10 million 50% tuition reduction to CCV courses that have a link to our workforce needs, and potentially to opine a little bit on the base appropriation request for trade scholarships. So I'm happy to try to cover those both. I will very briefly, I guess, give a little bit more specific detail around the governor's thought process with the language you'll see in the budget. You just heard a lot about it from President Judy and from her team, so I'll try not to repeat everything they just said. We actually started speaking with CCV about this concept last year, so I was really excited to see it come to fruition in this year's budget request to the legislature. So as you know, the ask from the governor and what we went back and forth and collaborated on with Vermont State College System and CCV in particular is this $10 million for a 2-year pilot to reduce tuition for certain CCV programs and courses by 50%. And then during that time, we'd be collecting data. You'll see some language in the budget about graduation rates, certificate completion, enrollment, and evaluate how it's going or how it needs to be modified. And at that time, we would be open to continuing that tuition reduction. I heard your question earlier, Rep, about, wouldn't this be better as a base appropriation? I think, like I just said, we would be open to continuing it, but we have to start somewhere. And without belaboring all the different details of putting together the large budget, this is where the governor was comfortable in terms of making certain allocations. Because, and also to your point, especially if we're successful, our workforce needs might shift and change over time and evolve. You'll see in the language that deciding which courses or programs or certificate tracks the tuition reductions applied to would be a decision made between Vermont State Colleges, so CCV, in consultation with the Vermont Department of Labor, the Secretary of Commerce, the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board, and I might be missing one other entity. But what they would do, and ideally, I'm going to pass these out. Maybe you've seen it or you have it. If you don't want it, give it back to me and I'll recycle it versus putting it in the recycle bin here. You know what I mean? I'll put it back out in the governor's office. But what I'm passing around right now is a publication from the McClure Foundation, Vermont Department of Labor, and it shows where the biggest workforce needs are. So what we did in terms of, just to give you some examples, or when we were looking and shaping this out with CCV, like how far would $10 million stretch? How many courses could we cover? We were looking at the workforce needs from this publication and cross-referencing it with what does CCV currently offer for courses. And again, their course catalog shifts year to year. But some examples of things, could I actually just look at this one here, and that CCV offers that this would be applied to is they have childcare programs, accounting, business, allied health in particular are a couple that come to mind. One that may not be quite so obvious, but we would like to apply it to is also English, especially because CCV works with a lot of new Americans. So to the extent English is helpful in terms of like common speech, right? And in terms of employment and living in Vermont, we would be open to applying it to that as well. So we're pretty excited about this. Again, I don't want to rehash anything that President Judy just said. There was one other point I wanted to hit on. She mentioned a little bit about the 802 opportunities. We'll talk about trade scholarships in a moment. And I can't remember if she mentioned it or not, but the McClure Foundation's made a very generous gift to CCV and the Vermont State College system, where they're currently paying for recent college graduates to get free courses, which is fantastic. But we think this too will complement some of the older demographic that attends CCV, like President Judy and her colleague that was with her was describing the average age of their student is in their late 20s. And so if they're not a recent high school graduate, this will help increase accessibility for that demographic of folks as well. And then maybe I'll just run through trade scholarships real quick, and then again, happy to entertain questions. So last year, there was a really big omnibus workforce bill that this committee had a huge hand in for those that were here. It was S11. I think it's either now Act 183 or 173. 183. I still reference it all the time. I should have that seared into my memory. But one of the things that the governor proposed and the legislature passed was the creation of these trade scholarships. And the idea that we originally proposed was for them to support mechanical, electrical, and construction trades, especially given, again, I was just in here on ARPA about a month ago, all of the infrastructure work that we need to do and sustain with all this ARPA money, from broadband to building houses. I don't know if anybody's tried to have work done on your house recently. I haven't, but I've been hearing, just very anecdotally, right? Finding a plumber, finding an electrician, finding a carpenter right now is very, very hard. And so what we tried to do to encourage people to take this on as a profession is, again, make that cost more affordable. And so the really cool thing about the trade scholarships, and I saw Marilyn from VSAC is, yes, back behind me, so she'll speak a little bit more, is this scholarship or this stipend can be brought to a variety of programs. It doesn't just apply to like VTC or CCV. If there's like a private, I'm making this up, Yes Tomorrow Design School, I don't know if that's in anybody's district here, or adult CTE programs, you can use that at a wide variety variety of partners, which is pretty neat. So anyway, $3 million was appropriated last year. Since Marilyn is on, again, I keep looking behind me, but Marilyn, I know you're probably seeing me in front here. We'll probably go through some of the data. It's gone really well since its launch this fall. It's been really popular, and it was really great to hear the Vermont State College system just saying that a lot of their students were accessing it, and it was funded with one-time money. We'd like to make that an ongoing institutionalized program. So what the governor is proposing is $1 million in base to make that a perpetual trade scholarship fund for Vermonters that are interested. And so I think, again, going back to the CCV tuition reduction, if you think about the way all of these things are going to interplay, from the trade scholarships to reducing tuition to hopefully the continued, so this is hopefully depending on what choices the legislature makes, the continuation of 802 opportunities. There's lots of childcare scholarship money still out there, nursing scholarship money still out there. We really will be making a dent for those where affordability is the barrier to continuing to train or upskill, to at least get a barrier out of the way there. And then tomorrow, Tori from our office will be in, and she'll be in later this afternoon on refugee proposals as well, but we'll give a broader context of the larger workforce package that the administration's proposing, and a little bit more context about exactly where these two things fit into the strategy. So with that, or I don't know, Jay, if there's anything, you should introduce yourself. I don't know if you've been in committee yet this year.
Hello, Jay Ramsey. I am now at the Department of Labor. I am also newly in the role of Interim Director of Workforce Development. So 6 days in. No hard questions, please. I would just add to what Kendall's saying about the trade scholarship that my previous role at the department was as the director of the Registered Apprenticeship Program. And when I'm talking to businesses about creating a program or whatever it is that they need to bring on an apprentice, being able to talk about the trade scholarship as an opportunity for an individual to have whatever they need paid for is it's an additional selling feature. Bigger states have lots of selling features to get businesses to commit to registered apprenticeship. We have a short list, and I'm glad to say that this trade scholarship was on the list. Mm-hmm. So I'm here representing the Department of Labor.
Jay also has a great lens too, if you want to talk about your previous role at the Agency of Education and what you did there. No, I'm just saying you have a lot of great institutional knowledge in this space.
So I came to the Department of Labor last year, quickly coming up on my 1-year anniversary. But before that, I worked for the Agency of Education for 10 years and the last 5 as the state director for technical education. So I worked with all the tech centers. I know about the adult education and literacy system. And so I bring that experience of that knowledge base and as an effort to try to help align what our businesses need with what our education system is doing.
Kendall, if we can go back to, thanks, Jay. Nice to see you in person finally, too.
It's been a while.
In real life after legislating last year's. Kendall, you meant, and I really appreciate this point you made around being open to extending these courses that the 50% tuition reduction to program would cover to include folks who are learning English, language access piece to it.
Right.
So just to get clearer, so would not be currently. How do we get to that? Because I think that's a very critical part that connects to workforce development, connects to supporting these new Vermonters, all the things, right? And so I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost. So
exactly.
A little bit more about that.
Yeah. So if this was to pass in the budget and the budget's effective July 1, we would be in a place where we could apply this for the fall tuition at CCV. What Dr. Judy, I know it's President Judy. She also has a PhD, and I have this tick where I want to call her Dr. Judy. Sorry, President Judy. If she was here, she would tell me to stop calling her doctor. And I were talking about is if this seems like the legislature is interested in this and it's going to pass, we would start talking like throughout the spring to be prepared once they know if they're putting together their course catalog for the fall about what courses it would be applied to. So what would happen is the language isn't super prescriptive because their course catalog changes every year. So what it would be is this kind of committee of people looking through the course catalog and publication in the Department of Labor's data about where the greatest workforce needs. But to not lose that, to be just very transparent, it really would be on like the governor's office, the Department of Labor and CCV to make sure that English is in that course listing of where it's applied to. But the governor was very, just so you know, for what it's worth, like personally invested in that and was like, if English is something that they have a lot of English language learners taking, we should absolutely apply it to that space as well.
And so not to be limited to those particular workforce areas that are keys, but just be more expansive for folks in those courses.
So we really want to keep it very targeted to the workforce needs plus English classes.
Only in those particular workforce categories or.
Sorry. So again, we'd look at where the greatest workforce needs and where do the courses align. And so, like I was giving examples of childcare, business, sorry if we're talking like this, accounting, health, the allied health courses. So we'd apply it, again, that's their current course catalog, apply it to those. And then if they have, or if they're offering that semester English courses that are being utilized by new Americans, for example, so that it's just beneficial, right, to living and working in Vermont, we would apply it to those English courses as well. The English courses might be general, like intro to English, if that brings some clarity. Sorry if I'm not understanding your question correctly.
So people would have to be also enrolled in one of these workforce.
Oh, sorry, no. Could be separate, sorry. Yep, nope, it could be separate, yeah.
Okay, because obviously I think that's critical for them to work forever, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yep.
We got there.
Yes.
I'll have a quick question. On this document, do you believe that the rate, the actually earning, median wages are actually higher now than when this was printed? Because
You go ahead.
and it says the median wage of $22 an hour, but I know that so much has gone up and the wages. And just at a glance, I was wondering if.
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm going to yield to my colleague here from the Department of Labor, whose publication this is.
Yeah, so thank you. So this is updated 6 days in, but I did participate in reviewing this when it was being prepared over the summer. So this is the most current version. It is created using data probably from last spring. So there is a little bit of a lag. And so I think probably maybe it's not reflecting what is actually happening right now. I'd have to consult with Matt Barowitz to confirm on that. I could get back to you if you like.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if like generally is it 10% higher now? Is it, I'm just at a glance, I was thinking like, well, these are like $22.55 is a good hourly wage, but still it's perhaps not.
Let me get the answer to the question and I'll.
It does say on here with 2021 wage data.
2021 wage data. Oh, okay, I bet it's higher then. Okay.
This resource compiled from CDOL's long-term occupational projections released in September 2022, the 2021 wage data.
So it's sort of 2 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So I'd be interested to know, like, are we 10% higher, 15% higher? Is it the same? Maybe it's the same. I don't know. I'd just be curious to know. Thanks. Not that it makes any difference for what we're doing, but thank you.
Questions? I mean, I imagine that these are entry-level positions, wages.
I'm gonna answer about the registered apprenticeship ones that are in there. That is the wage at the end of the apprenticeship program. So what the average wage is that an employer pays someone for being in a 4-year training program, like for electricians and plumbers, for instance.
They're coming out as a journeyman. That's between becoming a journeyman and their next 2 years and then becoming a master.
Right.
Oh, I see.
And I would also say this information lives we maintain a website with labor market information on it. So you could go to, I think it's vtlmi.info, and that information is updated on a regular basis. This information is kind of a summary of that information presented in a usable format for lay persons who would be advising students or job seekers. That's what this is intended to do.
Just for clarification, because we've talked about so many different things with the number of people that have come through. We're looking at the $5 million a year for 2 years to reduce the courses that will feed into these jobs by 50% for any person who is taking those courses, no wage or no family income.
Correct. So it would be,
Two separate.
President Judy said that the current price is 130 or 240 per credit. So yes, it would be the simple math of cutting that in half to like 120 a credit. And then, but again, the thing that I think helps is the interplay with all those different scholarship opportunities that are out there in the 802 Opportunity program, which essentially creates free CCV tuition for income eligible families, individuals that need it.
So together, it will make the 802 Opportunity money go much farther.
Yes, yeah, that's the goal and that's the hope. So I would actually love potentially for Marilyn when she goes to opine on that, because we did have a conversation with VSAC and CCV about your exact question. Will this make 802 Opportunity money go further? My understanding, so I want to say, Marilyn, please clean up after me if you need to, is that there is not a huge wait list for that money. So what they might be able to do is increase income eligibility instead of expanding the number of people. Go up and, well, so you would, but either increase income eligibility, again, Marilyn, please clean up, or help with some of the other wraparound costs like books or transportation. There was some thoughts about if we see after the first year, we didn't think we were ready given having to see how it goes to adjust either of those. But after the first year, if we see there's essentially extra 802 Opportunity money, what we can do to make that go further or make the program more robust.
Sure.
Were these done as a mailer by chance?
No, I don't think they were mailed. They were printed and we distribute them boxes to our regional offices. I think McClure distributes them to schools.
Yeah, this would make and I have to say, and I know that you mentioned that you're on the development of this. This is extremely well done. Everything from the card stock to the layout, the coloring.
I would just clarify that I reviewed for registered apprenticeship.
Take the win, Jay.
Okay, yes.
I have a huge box of these in the Governor's State House office. If you would like more.
Yeah, I would love to
distribute or to use.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Stop
this would be absolutely fantastic. Between the universities, the community colleges, even the career tech centers,
Yeah.
I think their guidance offices would absolutely love these.
Yeah.
I think we've mailed boxes to the tech center, so the tech centers all have them.
Oh,
The
perfect,
colleges have them. And this is I think the third iteration of this partnership with the McClure Foundation to make this information accessible and usable.
And this is good marketing.
Questions? Great, thank you
Thank you.
for joining us and
Yes.
your expertise, I think.
I make Jason up.
When we start, come back from break, we have 1 week to put a workforce bill together, and so we'll be asking you to help weigh in as well. So, thank you. Thanks, Kendall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We can do it.
Sure.
I'll plan to stay unemployed the entire time.
Every night of the week.
Marilyn, welcome.
My wife will be so happy about it.
I'm sorry.
And you're muted.
Scott should be joining us in just one moment.
Oh, and I just got a email from Cameron from Department of Labor that they mail these out to all UI claimants.
Good.
So Chair Marcotte, did you want me to start and testify on the governor's proposed budget? Or did you want me to start and work through my 2 o'clock testimony that you had requested? Where would you like me to begin?
I'll be right from the beginning. So let's go to the governor's proposal and then work into the other pieces.
Perfect. So in the governor's proposal, section E605, A, B, C, and D are all about Vermont Student Assistance Corporation. So the first one is the appropriation of $25,000 for the Emily Lester Scholarship. The Emily Lester Scholarship is a scholarship that is targeted to foster youth who have been in foster care for at least 6 months between the ages of 16 and 18. They need to be seeking an undergraduate degree and demonstrate financial need. They need to attend a Vermont college. We are able to, as you can well imagine, use all of these funds every year. So this year we had 25 applicants, 17 of them actually attended school, and all of them were funded. Section E605B speaks to the fact that VSAC has authority from the legislature to use up to 7% of our appropriation for the actual administration of the Vermont state grant programs that VSAC administers for the state of Vermont. We have not used those funds to administer the program, probably for 10 or 15 years, maybe longer than that. However, we have the authority to do so. And because our source of funding is loan revenue, as our federal loan program is paying down, our revenue stream is also decreasing. So there will be a point at some time in the future when we will need to take advantage of this particular provision, but it's not this year. So we have no intention of using it for this upcoming year. E605C. This is a provision that allows VSAC to use up to $100,000 for expenses associated with administering the funds. And the funds they're talking about are the forgivable loan programs that we administer on this behalf of the state of Vermont. We'll go over those in just a few moments, but as you know, there are a number of those programs, including nursing, the trades program that we've talked about, the National Guard program that you asked about today, and a number of others. And then the last section, section D, is the governor's proposal to put $1 million into the Vermont Trades program. And I know that that has been brought up at least twice today. But I'll just mention very briefly, VSAC last year's appropriation was $3 million. We received those funds in May when the legislature adjourned. We stood that program up and started accepting applications in September. So it has been running about 5 months. And so far, in the first 5 months of this program, we've obligated about $1 million, just slightly over $1 million. It is being used for all of the things that Kendall just mentioned to you. These are for people that are in the building trades, the mechanical trades, the construction trades. This was expanded from his original list of trades. when the legislature was finished with the legislation last year, it said, and all other high demand occupations, which we went through the Department of Labor to determine what is a high demand occupation in the state of Vermont. And Department of Labor said to us that it was easier to send us a list of what is not a high demand sector right now in Vermont. So pretty much any training program that takes less than 2 years to complete. So these are 1 year and 2 year certificate programs. They can be associate degrees. Anything that takes 2 years or less to complete the entire training program right now can be funded with a trade scholarship. And again, I'm using the word scholarship because that is the name of the program, but it is indeed a forgivable loan program. VSAC is recommending, and we are also requesting $1 million for this program. We have authority to roll forward any of the unspent funds. And right now we are anticipating that we will spend about $2 million in this program this year. So with the $1 million that is carried forward and the $1 million the governor is recommending, we would have a program of about the exact same size for next year to continue people's ability to receive certificates and licenses in the trades. So let me stop there and see if there's any questions on that, those 4 pieces.
Questions? What can, so in the trade scholarships, what can recipients use the money for?
Great question, Chair. The trade scholarship covers full tuition, and it can also cover licensing and exam fees. That was one of the problems that VTC and CCV and some of our other training programs called out to the legislature in VSAC, is that they had students, even our CTEs were saying it, they had students who were taking the training, but the license and exam fee is usually run by a different organization than the group that teaches the course. And that for some of our lowest income families, they were unable to come up with those license and exam fees. So they might be through the training and then get stopped at the door of actually getting the certificate that they needed to be able to work in that field. And so the legislature determined that licenses and fees, licenses and exams could also be covered with these funds.
Okay, great. So it sounds like we, just in 5 months, there's been a huge demand for this scholarship.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially if you look at the fact that the program didn't exist. And so no matter what program you're trying to roll out across an entire state, you need to get people to even know that it exists and how they access those funds. So the fact that we have obligated $1 million, I believe we have applicants from every single county in the state. We're already seeing a real response to the availability of these funds.
Okay. Any other questions on what Marilyn's covered so far? Okay.
All right. If I've got the ability to share my screen, Andrew, I'm going to go ahead and try that. All right, so when I share my screen, I will just say all of you become very little to me, but I'm hoping that you can see my screen. Can you tell me if you're seeing that?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. So these are the workforce development programs that VSAC is currently running for the state of Vermont. Most of these you've heard talked about in one way or another today from my colleagues who testified before I did. So 802 Opportunity is the program that offers free tuition at CCV for any family in Vermont earning less than $75,000 a year. The Advancement Grant is a program that funds short-term training in non-degree programs. So that program funds both non-degree courses like a standalone English course at a college or university, could be a continuing ed course, as well as someone taking a training program at a CDL driving school. Under the interest-free forgivable loan programs, we are currently running an early childhood education loan program. That one is actually ending very soon. We're doing one for the nursing program that we'll talk about the outcomes of that. The Vermont Trade Scholarship, which we've mentioned a few times. The Vermont National Guard Tuition Benefit Program that allows National Guard members to receive tuition at in-state institutions or any institution if they are looking for training programs. And a Vermont dentist program. There is also a forgivable loan program for primary care physicians that VSAC administers. We are working right now with the Department of Health, and hopefully in the next few months, we will stand up a program that is a forgivable loan for nurse faculty, as well as the Vermont mental health professionals. So taking just a moment to talk about 802 Opportunity, we are asking for $3.4 million in this program. And we are asking for that to be added to the base so that families know that this money is going to be available to them, and we can begin to market this a little more strongly than we can when it's one-time money and we're waiting each year to see whether or not those funds are going to be available. As I mentioned, if a family's adjusted gross income is less than $75,000, they are eligible for this. And this builds on existing money. So we look at their VSAC grant, their federal Pell Grant, and 802 Opportunity. And the combination of those three grant programs covers full tuition for those families. At CCV, the 802 Opportunity can cover professional certificate programs. It can cover associate degrees. And we are also seeing students use it where they're taking their first 2 years at CCV with the intention of transferring to either UVM, one of our state colleges, one of our private colleges, to actually earn their 4-year degrees. This is another program that CCV has done an excellent job in creating pathways for students to know exactly what they need to take at the Community College of Vermont in order to be able to take advantage of being able to transfer and have their credits transfer with them. And in fact, UVM refers to CCV as their largest source of transfer students. So this is a well-used program for that purpose as well. As you heard, both President Judy, Ryan, maybe even Kathleen mentioned it, over 2,100 students attended CCV tuition-free last year, and we already have a 6% increase in the number of students using it for the fall semester. So this program is another program that's been in place for 1 year, and we're starting to see a larger adoption and a growth in the program, just as we would expect to see, and hope to see, I should say.
Marilyn, can you just go back? You talked about the 3.4 million is added to the base funding.
That is what we are requesting. The governor has recommended one-time funding, and we are requesting that it be added to the base, if that can possibly happen.
Okay.
So some of the outcomes and some of the demographics to tell you who's using this program, 75% of the students using this program are first generation. What that means is that they do not have a parent that has a college degree. So they are the first in their families to go on to college. 72% of them are adults. So it is adult population that tends to use this, but as President Judy said, they now are seeing a very large increase in the number of traditional age students that are attending CCV. So 28% of the students that are using this are traditional age students. 17% of the students receiving this are people of color or Hispanic. I think on the success side of this program, 83% of the students successfully completed a course. So this is a program where students are going to CCV and they are staying in their seats and getting through those courses. Almost 60% of them earned a 3.0 or greater in the first 2 semesters of using this program. And 12% of the students who received funding actually received a certificate. So not all students are after certificates. As you know, we've talked about all the different ways you can use this, but we are already seeing students graduating with the certificates that they went to school for. So I think another really good indication of success here. And then the thing that Ryan mentioned, which I think is just cannot be overstated, the importance of this. Overall, CCV students borrowed 45% less in 2021-22 than they did in prior years. So we are seeing borrowing go down for these students, and we're seeing success go up.
Marilyn, Edie Granning, Jericho Underhill. So I just have 2 questions, and I don't know if you're the right person to ask them, but you have the slide up here. So the 83%, 59%, and 12%, so that's the students that are part of the 802 opportunity. Do you know what the percent of students who reached those targets are that aren't? So general population or overall for the schools?
I don't, but I certainly can get that information. That's definitely a CCV question, and Ryan is your expert on that, but I'd be happy to ask him.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have that comparison to see if it's how we're doing with that. And then my other question is, you mentioned that a number of students have completed their certificate. Do we have any information yet? I know it's brand new, on whether they have jobs, whether they are in full-time jobs, and whether they've moved into the job market?
Yeah, again, a great question for CCV. I will check with Ryan to see if they do job placement tracking.
Thank you.
I'm just taking a couple of quick notes so I remember to follow up on these.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. The next program I wanted to talk about was the Healthcare Workforce Incentive Loan Program. So these are the 3 programs that we have for healthcare right now. You have the Vermont Nursing Forgivable Loan Program. This is the longest running forgivable loan program that VSAC administers. It has been in existence for about 20 years, but for the first 18 years, it was a program that had $50,000 a year in it. And then 2 years ago, the legislature greatly increased this program right during the pandemic. So you had a special session in the fall of 20 where you put a lot more money into this program. So we ran an expanded program that covered full tuition for the spring of 21. We ran it for the whole 21-22 school year, and we're currently running it in the 22-23 school year. We, as I mentioned earlier, we are just standing up the Nurse Faculty Forgivable Loan Program. This program has about $500,000 in it. When this was originally funded, it was funded with ARPA funds. The Nursing Forgivable Loan is funded with Global Commitment Funds. The ARPA funds really can't be used for forgivable loans because they won't come to full, Scott, what is the word I am looking for that these loans need to reach? It's not maturity. What word am I looking for?
Sorry, no, I think they're full term.
Well, they have to be able to be paid fully back by the end of the ARPA time. And of course, you can't have a student pay back a $16,000 loan in a matter of months they need years to be able to do that should they not fill them with work obligation. The same problem was true with the Vermont Mental Health Professional Forgivable Loan. So both the nurse faculty and the mental health program, the state has found new funding for those. So those will be stood up this spring, and students will begin to be awarded those for summer and fall courses of this coming year. In the nursing program, the way this one works, nurses receive full tuition at all Vermont public institutions, and nurses receive up to the UVM tuition at the Vermont privates and at out-of-state institutions, not to exceed actual tuition. Students are required to sign a promissory note. This is a loan, and they are going to repay that loan with a work obligation, and it is 1 year of work for each year of funding. If they do not meet that work obligation, then this is collected as any other loan would be, and BSAC is the servicer that would collect that loan. So far, what we're seeing with this program, again, it's been highly successful. We're seeing a rapid adoption of it as well as growth in it. So 85% of recipients to date have met the work obligation. So this is definitely bringing nurses into Vermont to stay in Vermont and work. In the spring of 21, so that very first time that we stood up the expanded program, we had 66 nurses take advantage of it. In fiscal year 22, there were 88. And in fiscal year 23, we have 146 students that are enrolled in this program. So we're definitely seeing interest and growth, and students are definitely taking advantage of this funding.
Marilyn, these new nurses are not part of any business that recruits traveling nurses.
No, that was one of the stipulations that the legislature put in, is that you could work for any Vermont healthcare institution, but you could not be a traveling nurse. Traveling nurse work would not meet the work obligation.
Thank you.
We are also seeing students at all of our institutions. So we have 20 students at Castleton, 22 at Norwich, 31 at UVM, 44 at VTC, and 29 Vermont students are attending out-of-state institutions, still making that work obligation to return to Vermont and work following graduation and licensure. The other thing that the legislature has done is you have prioritized the way that you would like to see these awards be provided. So LPNs is your highest priority, followed by two-year RNs, 4-year RNs, and then graduate programs. The program that we're seeing, obviously the least use in, is 2-year RNs, but we have 29 students that are LPNs, 102 students are trying to get their 4-year RN, and we have 13 students this year, because you opened this up last year to graduate students. You have 13 students that are in graduate nursing programs.
That's great.
Okay, if there's not questions on nursing, I'll move on to the Vermont trades. So you heard Kendall speak about this. The Vermont Trades Program is another interest-free forgivable loan. So it's the exact same setup as the nursing program. For each year of tuition that they receive, an exam and licensing fees, they agree to work in the field in which they are trained in Vermont for 1 year. As of January 31st, I had mentioned earlier, we have awarded just over $1 million to 134 students representing all Vermont counties. And there is a list of some of the trades, and these are pretty high level. This isn't at the career, but you've got bookkeeping, you've got building trades, you've got computer software development, cosmetology, media and design communication, electricians, emergency services, energy trades, engineering, industrial trades, marketing, massage therapy, mechanical trades, medical trades, paramedics, teacher certifications, because we have a number of programs where you can become a teacher if you already have a bachelor's degree in a one-year program. And then transportation trades, those CDL licenses are also a very popular program right now. Any questions? I know that we've talked about this a lot with other folks in the room, so.
Well, I think everyone's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this last slide, which Andrew has copies of this entire presentation, just shows you VSAC's budget request, what we asked for or what we received in 23, what the governor recommended, what VSAC is requesting, and what the source of funding is, and the budget section number. So hopefully that's helpful. If you want me to walk through this, I will, but.
Marilyn, I'm sorry, I was reviewing this, and can you clarify for me which line item the nurse loan programs fall under in this summary?
Yeah, that's a great question. The nurse program is not a request from VSAC. That program actually goes through the Vermont Department of Health.
Oh, okay.
And it's my understanding, I want to be clear about this, I don't believe the Department of Health has put it in their budget. So that right now, I think that is an unfunded program.
Oh, really? Oh. Thank you.
Yeah. Let me just go a little bit out on a limb, and I probably, Scott will reel me in if I shouldn't say this. The nursing program, honestly, is hitting every single target that the legislature set for it. And we've got students that are in these programs really taking advantage of this. It seems like it would be a really difficult program to lose at this point, as badly as we still need nurses in the state of Vermont. So I'm hoping that, you know, we clearly are raising this. I met with House Healthcare last week to talk about this program, but it does seem like a workforce development program that it would be hard to lose at this point.
Marilyn, well, thank you for flagging that, because that's a little jarring to hear that it doesn't have it's not in a budget yet, at least for the nurse program. You didn't have a slide, and I know you're just scanning it up for the mental health professionals. So I'm just wondering if you could give us just a little bit of an idea of how that's starting to get structured. And I guess now my other question is that since that was originally a one-time ARPA money that went into gold dollars, does that have the same destiny? Is that going to end in funding? Is that not within the Department of Health's request either? Or how's that funding?
I believe it's the same thing. I think these are that both mental health and nurse faculty are both funded with one-time funding. And the way that the mental health program is set up, it is for students who are in a graduate program that leads to a career in a professional mental health capacity. So the Department of Health is defining what that looks like and what those can be. I've actually got a meeting, I think, maybe it's even this week, to meet with them and talk about this further, because, obviously we want to make sure that we define this in a way that those graduate students can really recognize whether or not they can take advantage of this program and meet the work obligation.
Right, and thank you. So this is another critical occupation. It's impossible to find mental health professionals as it is. And for this to be basically a one-year program would be such a loss, considering you just showed us a program that is really taking off on year 3 once people get to know it, et cetera. So I think, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with you completely. One-year programs are both expensive to stand up, right? And by the time people understand what they are and begin to look for them, they could already be gone.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay. Heather?
Well, technical question. Why is the nursing not, instead of the Department of Health, can it be here instead? Or how is that, have I stepped into something I should have asked? Oh, sorry, okay. Sorry, okay, retract that question, sorry.
I think it's an area we'll have more.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Think no questions here, Marilyn.
Perfect. Thank you so much for inviting us to join you today. And if there are questions that come up, Chair Marcotte, you do know where to find me.
Certainly do. Thank you, Marilyn. Scott, thank you as
Yep,
well.
thank you.
We appreciate your time.
Yep, no, and thank you for all the support that you've provided us. So really appreciate it.
Certainly appreciate all you do.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You, bye-bye. So we're only 5 minutes into our break, so we did pretty well reeling this back in. So why don't we take a break, come back at 3, and we'll hear from Commissioner Knight on liquor and lottery, the proposal on sports betting.